Well, hello again, and welcome to McFarland's Corner. This time, this is going to be a very special rundown. It's going to be exclusively for Berkeley baits. My first thing is I'll tell you, Berkeley baits, no ifs, ands, or buts, is a difference maker. The bait themselves is made with fish product. It's proven itself. The packages even make statements and things. Fish hold 18 times longer. They have to be able to prove that, and they can. And they've done the homework, the science, the tests, and there's no doubt that if you watch the elite anglers, if you watch the MLF anglers, there's a very, very, very big percentage of their baits are Berkeley. So this little rundown here is going to be exclusively for the Berkeley event up and coming this weekend, Saturday and Sunday, right here at the world famous Lake Fork. All right. As usual, in true Lake Fork rundown style, we're going to first talk about the lake. Okay. Listen closely. This is really important. It's a very, very big lake. Right now, lake levels are good. 401.10 to 401.04. We are falling, but not rapidly. 3/8 to ½ inch per day when we use it. But the weather's going to change the next several days. It looks like potentially a lot of water coming. Those levels you could find going on the rise, which remember, rising water rises fish. Falling water points them out. So the best case scenario could be to have this rain and stuff before the event, and then not necessarily bluebird skies Saturday, Sunday. That's not ideal. But the shallow bite's where it's going to be. This is what I want you to pay attention to. 0 to 3 feet. Okay. That's the visibility. If you're not having 0 to 3 feet, you're in the wrong spot. And here's what I mean. Yesterday, I took a nice drive around the lake. When I went over the 154 bridge and looked down, I saw gunmetal blue. Old Mr. Mark Peck, one of our favorites around here, one of the very best to ever guide and fish on Lake Fork, used to say, if the lake is gunmetal blue and you ain't catching them, you missing something, son. In that gunmetal blue area, in that water, it's a normal bite, man. 10, 15 feet, worms, brush piles, worms and jigs on brush piles, and fish the lake normal. So if you're in that gunmetal blue water, 0 to 3 foot visibility. I then went a little further and I went across the 515 west, and I looked down and I saw kind of a rusty, I can't explain it, familiar with it. It was kind of turned over water. It certainly wasn't gunmetal blue anymore. And the visibility is different and the bite is different in that area. So remember that. You're looking for the clearest water you can find. Be mobile. A guy told me the other day that an area he had been fishing in for 3 weeks was pretty darn good, and overnight it turned brown. You got to watch that. If your areas turn brown, you probably want to leave, okay? But 74, 78 degree water temperatures. The lake's in good shape, staging for a great fall. With that being said, what I'll tell you about this lake, it seems to be history in October, is that this lake has always fished pretty rough in the Berkeley events in the past. There's not a whole lot of overs, usually only a handful. And it's usually a smaller over that's caught on some kind of a frog. Remember, frog style bait. Okay, remember, this has to be a Berkeley bait. All right, so we're going to end with that. At the end of the show, we're going to talk about some ways that you can approach those winning fish. But let's just talk about being able to catch some fish right now. All right, as we've been talking to McFarland Fishing, the Lake Fork guide, I've been throwing a lot of underspins with small baits. Okay. Reaction, little dippers, just anything, little paddle tail baits. I discussed that smaller action, small bait, tiny bait, small vibrations are better than the big, huge vibrations to get those bites for those unders. Been throwing that on an underspin, okay? So what you can do to convert, you can still use the underspin. And by the way, in this Berkeley event, you can use terminal. You can use hooks, weights. You can use a spinner bait from another brand, but pull off all the skirt and put a minnow on it. Okay, but you can use terminal. You can use, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more. So here's an underspin. Okay, 3/8 ounce underspin, and I put on this what they call the deal. All right, this is a little one. This Berkeley, the deal. I believe is a 3.5. I'm going to show it to you here. It's a smaller version of the big one. Right? And it's the, yes, this one's a 3.5 inch, 3.5 inch. Okay. They've got a bigger one. If you did want to throw the bigger one, you get around bigger bait. You could go to this one here being the 4.5 inch. But this is called the Deal. And it's great bait for right now. It's got two small little tails instead of a paddle tail. It's really fast. And if you get around the shallow bait and the white egrets, you'll catch some of those fish with this bait. You can catch a lot of small fish, but you certainly can come up with some money fish. All right. I personally right now, I'm throwing that on 15-pound Mason bass on my brand new CB 7'3", I think this is. 7'2". Wow, cool. That's even better. I like that little bit shorter rod for this smaller bait. But this is a 1225 from Real-Time Rods, and it can handle that small bait, but yet still handle a big fish. All right. Also on the underspin, there's another. The bait's real small now in that shallow water. So keep in mind, whatever it is you use has to be Berkeley, and it has to be, in my opinion, match the hatch, small bait. So this one here is going to be the called a grass pig, Berkeley grass pig. It's just a real tiny little bait. If you're around real small bait, this is going to get bit. Is it going to be a fish of a lifetime? I don't know that. Right now with that lake turning over, it's so random what those big fish are eating. You got to remember that in the fall, when the lake does turn over, those fish go shallow and there's a lot of oxygen issues. There's a lot of good water, bad water. Really what can happen is those fish don't, it's like you and I having a bellyache, right? So there's all this random small bait available from spring, and it's really, really vulnerable. And so they will actually eat that small bait. It digests faster. It's, like I said, it's more readily available. They don't have to work as hard to get it. It's right there in the shallow water with it. That's why we're struggling right now. There's a lot of fish in the shallow water, but there's so much food to choose from. And we can't match it. Okay, everything's tiny, tiny, tiny. You will come across some bigger bait, and sometimes in those cases, increase the size that you're throwing. Okay, remember, these baits can be even used not just behind an underspin, but behind a chatterbait. You can take a chatterbait, pull everything off of it, put just one of these, the Deal, okay, the Berkeley, the Deal. Let me get you this other one that ain't been opened. The Deal, okay. That right there in the big size, I plan on throwing this one tomorrow. So that's my reaction. That's really all I'm going to do besides what I'm going to end the show with. But I'm going to cover a lot of water. I'm going to throw those at shallow docks, shallow stumps, do nothing banks. I'm going to run around this week, and because there's so many boats, the lake's going to get stirred up. Right, when the tournament happens especially, and where I'm leading you is you're not going to be able to follow the birds or fish the birds come Saturday and Sunday. They're going to be spooked. So pay attention to where those birds were on Wednesday, on Thursday, and Friday, and utilize the knowledge that you gained days before to choose where to be fishing on the day of, okay? Remember that there are so many boats. Sometimes when you get in one little area and you're catching fish, you're better off to just stay there and catch what's available in that area than to move on and give it up to someone else. And you may move on into dead water, and you're stuck now in dead water. You'd have been better off staying in that live water even if you didn't catch anything. Very good point right there. Okay, now let's move on. I really suggest that you focus for the unders. These baits that I'm talking to you about right now are going to be perfect for the unders. Even in the 10 to 12 to 15 foot of water, I'm still going to probably go ahead and use a little Texas rig and a small power bait worm. My favorite color, black grape when the lake's turning over. In the fall, period. Really late summer. I just love grape, black grape. It's hard to beat. I'm going to use that on a little bit lighter line. Not much, because I still can hook a giant fish on fork. I'm going to basically run this on my MB series rod, real-time rods, 15-pound test. I'm going to run about a 1/4 ounce. I really like to be lighter with that small worm. 1/4 ounce to 3/8 ounce tungsten. And peg it, 3/0 hook, okay? That is a Berkeley worm. You can utilize that worm in multiple colors, okay? I like the black grape, purple, another really good one, blue fleck. It's hard to beat. red shad, June bug, any one of your favorite colors, those little worms in the 10 to 15 foot of water. If you're in gunmetal blue areas, remember the color of the water, clarity, clarity, clarity. Those fished on brush piles and things will get you some good bites as well, okay? Sometimes in the past week, I've actually audibled off of the worm and I've gone to a V&M chopstick. And the bite's been there a little bit. The V&M chopstick and the Texas smoke and the watermelon candy. Well, believe it or not, Powerbait has their version of Senko. It's called the General. So don't be afraid to throw that General around. You might win it on something like this. The fishing's tough and you just go Texas rigging or weightless rigging one of these deals right here. You could really be surprised what big fish will eat that. And we're going to talk about this and these next few baits in a totally different location. Okay? So I'm going really fast. I want to back up a step. The reaction baits, the underspins, and the small worms, I'm going to fish those super shallow, less than 5 feet. And if you think you're shallow, go even shallower. Yes, it's best to find some vegetation of any kind at all, even if it's just simple pondweed. Hit all targets, especially the bigger stumps with roots, okay? Docks, very effective. As long as there's bait, there will be bass, okay? The bigger bass, though. Remember last year in the Elites when Patrick Walters was catching them suspending in the trees? It's exactly where they are right now. 5 to 8 to 10 feet of water, they're suspending, 5 to 10 feet of water, they're suspending in trees that are in 15 to 20 feet of water. The bigger fish, you're going to catch slots, but you might find your big over this way. This is where I would step up to the larger Senko type bait, the General. This is where I would throw the 10-inch power worm, maybe in blue fleck. Again, in the same favorite colors, red shad, black grape, okay? But I'm not going to fish these in that shallow water. I may a little. I may make some areas that when I've caught some fish with the smaller baits, I might go ahead and throw the bigger baits in those shallow areas. But I'm going to go fish those trees with this. I'm going to fish it one way only, and that's Texas rig. So anyone that follows me, if you look back in the archive, a while back I was using the Magnum trick worm. I used 20-pound fluorocarbon on my signature CB 7'3" 1530. Very powerful rod. Real-time rod makes that for me. It's Bushido, and you can't go wrong. Large 5 and/or 6-odd hook. 3/8 to ½ ounce weight. I want to really bang and clunk the wood, the trees, or the brush piles that I'm going to put this in. Believe it or not, Berkeley power baits, they make their version of this trick worm as well. And it is called the bottom hopper. This is the fatty bottom hopper. This is the 7-inch. It's real close to the Zoom Mag trick worm. Watermelon candy. I'm going to Texas rig this one. And if you fish with me in the past, say since July, then you already know how to go throw this. This is the deal. I'm going to chartreuse that tail about at least 1/4 inch, maybe a little bigger this time of year, maybe almost an inch worth. I want a big flashy chartreuse tail on this thing. I am going to find those big suspended trees that those bass are in. I'm going to side scan, see the bass in those trees. Live scope them if you got it. I'm going to throw this worm over the tree, drag it to the tree, drag it up in the tree, and antagonize those fish, just like Patrick was with the jerk bait. But I'm going to do it with a Texas rig worm. Much more weedless. And if I leave that, if I can really get the feel and learn to feel it, when that thing gets on the top of that tree, that's when that bite's going to come. Sometimes that bite's very aggressive, and sometimes it's just mush. And you've got to really distinguish the difference because you'll pull it right out of their mouth. If they're non-active, they will suck it in and just sit there, and you'll pull it right out their mouth. If they're aggressive, they'll take it, swim to the bottom, or really thump on it, and you'll know it. But the bottom line is those big ones are in those trees. They're suspending in those bigger trees. And, all right, and that's my opinion, the only other place that you'll find big fish. All right, but let's end this with probably the way this will be won once again. This is the way I plan on showing my fishermen the rest of this week on what to do. Every year there's a small 8.5 pound over that's caught shallow on a frog or a frog, buzz frog type bait of some sort. Well, Berkeley does now offer a pretty darn good looking popping frog. Okay, in the past, I think they've allowed some Sabile baits. Maybe they still do. But there's a better one. And here's why. By the way, let me back up before I show you this cool secret. If you like to Carolina rig, brush hog bite is pretty good right now. 10 to 15 feet of water on points, brush piles. But they do have what they call the power hog. Your traditional colors, watermelon candies, whatever your favorite color is. But don't be afraid to also Carolina rig the brush hog on the points, okay? That can also get you some good bites right now. All right. But let's go with, in the fall, there's nothing better than a buzz bait. For some reason, it's been one of the most effective baits all time in the fall. Topwater and a buzz bait. When the water cools down, those fish go real shallow. They can hear it from a long ways away. But did you know that for this Berkeley event that you can take everything off of a buzz bait or a chatterbait or spinner bait? You can pull everything off of it and exclusively use a power bait of some sort. Okay, whether it be a swim bait like this one here, which this is actually the power swimmer in the 4.3, okay, on a buzz bait. This is deadly, 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 deadly. Okay, we've been doing this for years. When I say we, I mean me as a professional bass fisherman in the world of bass fishing. It's no secret. If you've been a part of it, you've been making a living. You've seen me many times in the fall that we take some type of a horny toad type bait, which Berkeley now makes. And or this one's called the beaten paddle frog. I'm excited right now because this is the one that's going to go on my bait right now. I'm going to show you. Tomorrow morning, we're going to throw this. I'm going to throw this the next few days, and Friday I'll give you guys another quick update for the weekend. But take your traditional buzz bait, pull everything off, okay? Put the frog or buzzing frog, in this case the beaten paddle frog, Berkeley beaten paddle frog. Man, I can smell this Berkeley stuff. It's incredible. It really, it's kind of like I love my real-time magic stuff for soaking my plastics in it. It doesn't have that stinky flavor, smell, the lingering ooh. Berkeley kind of like catches your attention, but then kind of leaves me at least with an ooh. So there it is. All right. I have thrown this bait with a horny toad for over 20 years in the fall. One of the most effective ways to catch really big bass. Those really big bass are in shallow water. You got a lot of action, a lot of spitting water, a lot of vibration. They can hear it from a long ways away. So whether you're using the frog version or some kind of a swim bait version, okay, this is how I believe somebody that would tie this thing on and commit, absolutely commit this weekend, and not put it down and throw it around every single shallow stump and every single shallow dock and every single bit of grass and just threw their arm off for 2 days. Stand a chance to win this thing. Okay. I'm going to use braid line when I do this because I'm going to throw this around some serious junk, in the junk, through the junk. I'm going to use a minimum of 55-pound braid. I'm going to have a high-speed gear ratio reel so I can get the fish out of the junk, but I'm also going to make sure that I don't overfish it because of that. You can really reel too fast with one of those. I want a buzz bait to where it's just slow, generally just about as slow as it can go, where it's almost going to die and fall back underwater. So as its prop is going, it's just barely chopping, and it's wanting to fall underwater, and it's just like it's hurt, like it's injured. So with a high gear ratio, you can end up speedboating it, I call it, and that's not good. So just keep in mind, what I throw mine on against 55-pound braid. It's the only basic braid you're going to see me throw. Frogs, popping frogs, walking frogs, buzzing. I also throw my chatterbaits on it because I throw my chatterbaits in heavy grass. But this is going to be a totally different rod you haven't heard me talk much about. It's going to be FS 7'8", 1225 This thing is also a very powerful rod. Holds up to 2 ounce baits, 3/8 to 2 ounce. So I can throw that lightweight bait to the heavy bait, but I can handle the big giant bass. In this case, I can rip them right out of the heavy cover. All right, so try that. Any one of these techniques could really catch you the fish that you're looking for in this tournament. The hourly money, I'm telling you, tiny bait, small buzz, smaller profile, you may catch an under that wins that hour. Okay, so I think I've shared enough with you. I asked 2 things. Number one, all this stuff that I've showed you is available at Lake Fork Marina. I think it's also available at Lake Fork Resort. I know it's available on the east side at the Minute Bucket and Oak Ridge. I think even Axton's probably carries a little bit of the Power Bait Berkeley line of stuff. You may want to look ahead, plan ahead. This stuff sells out super fast. So as you're pre-fishing this week, you may want to make sure that you get some of these things ahead of time. You may want to go to Bass Pro Shops and go ahead and get you some of this. I'm going to be throwing this around the next 2 or 3 days. This will be my approach. I have to change from what I was doing and prove that this can take its place. Very confident that the Berkeley line of baits will do just that. And again, so just a couple quick summaries. Oh, I want to add you a thing. I rarely use a stinger on the buzzbait, all right, unless I'm missing fish first. I'm going to throw this in so much junk and around the junk that I don't want that stinger catching up the extra tea leaves or alligator weed or any of the stuff, the duckweed. I just don't want that, okay? If you're going to use a stinger hook, let me put this on here for you to show you. It really drags way back here behind. Miss a few fish first. You know, have a fish come unbuttoned. I hate to say that, but I'm always going to throw it without it until I've missed a few, and then I'm going to put it on there, all right? Just keep in mind there's a lot of anglers, a whole lot of anglers in this event. You get an area, once you leave it, you may never ever get it again. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge, isn't what to throw or where to throw it. It's being able to get in an area and actually apply. And so with that being said, what I'm leaning on is patience. In some places that you know are healthy, maybe your favorite spot is covered up, in other words. Patience. Sit back and watch. Grab yourself a soda. That person that's in that area may not stay long themselves. Assess the scenario. If they really look like they're going to stay, then maybe you don't waste your time and wait. But this Berkeley event is about patience and being in the right area for the right amount of time. It's all timing. So shallow fish, go catch them. I hope that helps, guys. I wish there were some other ways. There are some other great ways to catch them right now that just don't involve Berkeley baits. And I'm not even sure. Somebody also mentioned to me, you might be able to throw an Alabama rig. If you do that, you may be able to use some of these style baits here and be very effective on some of those schooling fish around the bridge pylons. So if you're allowed to check with Berkeley, if you're allowed to throw an Alabama rig, that might be another way. You might want to use this little, these little guys right here would be ideal, which is the power swimmer. And/or I'm looking forward to throwing this other little guy because it's so small, and that's the grass pig. So I think an Alabama rig rigged up with grass pigs, if you're allowed to do so, that could be really deadly. All right. So man, hope that helps you guys. It's my best rendition. Remember, Lake Fork is a really tough lake, and you have to stay in the game. And many times when you think that little 1.8 pound fish or 2.2 fish isn't going to get paid, it very well might have. And there's been some times, some of the hours, especially the first hour, there's much smaller fish than you expect will win that hour. So tune in to Camu, listen to what's going on, be safe. I appreciate you watching. I'm rambling a little bit. I wanted to make this as good as I could and as meaty as I could for you. Thanks for watching. I'm Mike McFarland, the Lake Fork Guide, giving you a Lake Fork rundown. Give me the thumbs up and likes below. Comment. Someone catch a big fish. I appreciate you watching. I'm Mike McFarland.